They always said families were meant to protect you, but mine treated me like a shadow. My mother worshipped my sister, showering her with wealth and gifts that I could only dream of. I was the afterthought, the one who got nothing, the one they thought would never fight back. On the night of my engagement, the truth of their cruelty was unveiled for the world to see. My mother handed my sister $13 million as if money was candy, even selling my car to give her more. I stood there in silence, humiliated, as my fiancé's family whispered, wondering if I was the wrong bride. But then, a single phone call shattered everything. In that moment, their empire crumbled, their secrets spilled, and the world finally saw them for who they truly were. This is not just the story of betrayal. It is the story of how the forgotten daughter rose from the ashes and made the very people who tried to bury her choke on the dust of their own downfall. My name is Ava, and I'm 26 years old. I thought tonight would be the happiest night of my life, the night my family honored my engagement and finally saw me as enough. The ballroom glowed like a dream. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids, a gold aisle runner leading to a stage framed in soft candlelight. A string quartet played a sweet, steady melody. I stood there in a champagne dress that hugged my nerves more than my waist, hands clasped, smile practiced, heart loud. Then my mother took the microphone. "Tonight," she said, her voice ringing bright and proud, "we celebrate love and we celebrate our favorite girl." The crowd turned toward me, and for one warm second I believed she meant me. But my mother angled her body, stretched out an arm, and waved my sister forward like a star being called to the stage. "Darling," she told my sister, "this is for you. $13 million to enjoy yourself, to shop, to shine."
People gasped.
Phones tilted up. Cameras flashed. My sister laughed, putting on an act of humility as staff rolled out boxes, designer bags, glittering jewelry, envelopes sealed with wax. She kissed our mother's cheek. I tried to breathe. I clapped because my hands remembered how to perform even when my heart didn't. I felt my fiancé, Ryan, shift closer. "Ava," he whispered, "are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, the lie obedient and smooth. "It's just unexpected." The quartet kept playing, but the notes suddenly sounded thin, like a smile stretched too far. The MC, eager to keep the show moving, congratulated the family's generosity, and I felt something cold crawl up my spine. A waiter offered me sparkling water. I nodded and didn't drink. My throat had already turned to glass. "And one more thing," my mother added, as if tossing confetti. "We wanted our favorite girl to travel in style." She signaled a man in a dark suit, who stepped forward with a clipboard and a ring of keys I knew very well. "My keys. I sold Ava's car this morning," my mother said lightly, and redirected every cent to her sister's accounts. It was just sitting there wasting value. The room wobbled. Somewhere, a fork pinged against china. Ryan inhaled, sharp and angry, but I caught his hand and gave it a tiny shake. "Not here. Not yet." The urge to scream rose in my chest like a siren, but I swallowed it down and sealed my mouth with the last of my pride. I stood still and watched my own life handed away like an extra favor at a wedding door. My sister stepped off the stage and paraded past me, perfume thick as sugar. "Don't pout," she murmured, low enough for only me to hear. "You've always looked better quiet." I stood there in silence, as Ryan's family whispered, wondering if they had chosen the wrong bride. I felt their eyes skimming over me, measuring my worth by the thinness of my gift table, and my stomach tightened until I thought it would fold in two. For a second, shame tried to claim me. But then something else, older and stronger, woke up. Shame is a costume they put on you. Dignity is skin. I straightened. The quartet hit a bright note. The chandeliers threw coins of light across the floor. I pictured the hours I worked, the life I built without announcements, without applause. I pictured every time I paid a bill early, every time I showed up when nobody noticed, every quiet act my mother never counted because it didn't glitter enough to brag about. Ryan squeezed my hand again. "Say the word," he said, "and we leave." Not yet, I whispered. Let them talk. The MC invited guests to the dessert table. Plates clinked, laughter returned in careful doses, and the room pretended to breathe normally again. I could hear my aunt telling someone that my sister always deserved more. I could hear a cousin asking if my mother and I were fighting. A stranger's perfume drifted past, vanilla and smoke, and I felt time slow under the weight of a decision I hadn't fully named. I stepped away from the crowd and found a sliver of quiet near a column wrapped in white roses. From there, I watched my mother making her rounds, every smile pasted on like a label. She was radiant, too radiant, and beneath the radiance, frantic. I knew that look, the edge of control disguised as celebration. When she reached me, she didn't bother to lower her voice. "Try not to look so empty," she said. "You embarrass me." "Do I?" I asked softly. "Or does generosity you can't afford embarrass you more?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't start." "I didn't," I said. "You did." We stared at each other, our shared cheekbones sharp as warnings. She leaned in, her pearls clicking against her collarbone. "This night is bigger than you, Ava. Don't ruin it. Smile, congratulate your sister, and don't mention the car again." "Not my car," I said. "My boundary." "Boundaries are for people with leverage," she snapped, and sailed away before my answer could follow her. Ryan found me again. "Ava, this is obscene. I'll talk to the manager. We'll step out for air. You don't have to." "I do," I said. "Just for a little longer." He studied my face and nodded, trusting me in a way that steadied the ground under my feet. It amazed me how trust could feel louder than a microphone. The music changed, something bolder. A server passed with a tray of tiny lemon tarts. I took one, held it, and didn't taste it. My sister stood on the stage again, modeling a necklace like a child playing with a crown. Guests clapped on cue. Then my mother's phone rang. It was the kind of ring that slices through a room no matter how much noise you stack on top of it. She glanced at the screen and answered instantly, her smile held in place like a pinned butterfly. "Hello," she sang. "Yes, we're celebrating what?" "No, that's impossible. We settled that this morning." Her smile faltered. A second line appeared between her brows. She turned her back to the room, one hand at her waist, the other pressed hard to the phone, as if she could force the words to change. "I said that's impossible," she repeated lower now. The transfer was confirmed. The accounts were, "What do you mean frozen?" The quartet stumbled. A violinist missed a note. Conversations thinned. I watched a vein jump in my mother's temple. She pivoted, scanning the room, and for the first time all night, she looked small under all that light. The pearls at her throat suddenly seemed heavy. She took a step toward the exit, then another. The phone clamped to her ear. "By whose order?" Her voice cracked. "No, listen to me, this is a private event." "You can't." The call kept talking. Whatever it said carved the color right out of her face. People watched her now the way people watch fireworks, waiting for the next burst, eyes bright, mouths open. My sister paused mid-pose, confusion wrinkling the edges of her perfect smile. Ryan's fingers found mine again. "What is it?" he asked. I didn't know, but I knew this. The room had just tilted in my direction, and gravity, at last, was on my side. My mother lowered the phone, staring at nothing, then swiped to call someone else with shaking hands. The chandeliers hummed. The quartet waited. The entire night held its breath. "Who are you calling?" I asked, stepping closer. She looked up at me like I was a stranger who had somehow guessed her real name. "Your father's lawyer," she said, and the word lawyer landed in the center of the room like a dropped stone in a glass lake. "What happened?" I asked. She swallowed, throat tight. "Something you'll never understand," she hissed. "Unless you were the one who did it." "Did what?" Before she could answer, her phone rang again. Louder this time, urgent enough to make the crystal tremble. And that's when I knew the night wasn't about gifts anymore. It was about the truth calling, finally, and refusing to be sent to voicemail. The air inside that ballroom had changed. It wasn't just a party anymore. It was a stage collapsing under its own weight. My mother's pearl necklace looked like a chain tightening around her throat as she clutched the phone, her hands trembling against the glow of the chandelier light. The guests whispered louder now, no longer about me, but about her. I caught fragments: frozen accounts, debts, lawyer, scandal. Their voices buzzed like a hive of bees that had just been kicked. My sister stood frozen on the stage, her designer gown shimmering under the spotlight, but her confidence was fading as fast as her lip gloss. She glanced at our mother with wide, panicked eyes. For once, her smirk had evaporated. Ryan leaned closer, his voice low. "Ava, something's very wrong. This isn't just about favoritism anymore." I nodded, but I didn't speak. I wanted to see my mother unravel with my own eyes. For years she had held me under her thumb, reminding me I was the lesser daughter, the shadow behind the family jewel. But now, the jewel looked cracked, and shadows have a way of stretching until they cover everything. My mother turned back toward the crowd, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just a minor inconvenience," she announced, her voice too bright, too brittle. "Nothing to worry about." But the room wasn't buying it. I could feel the collective suspicion thickening like smoke. A family friend whispered loudly enough for 3 tables to hear, "You don't get a lawyer involved over a minor inconvenience." Ryan's father exchanged a look with his wife, one I recognized as quiet alarm. They weren't just questioning me anymore. They were questioning whether they'd tied their future to a family sinking in scandal. My sister rushed off the stage, heels clicking like gunshots against the marble floor. She grabbed my mother's arm, whispering furiously, "Tell me it's not true. You promised." "Not here," my mother snapped, shaking her off. Her eyes darted around, calculating like a cornered animal. I stepped forward, my voice louder than I expected. "What's not true, Mother? Maybe you should tell everyone." The room fell into silence again. Every eye turned toward us. On me, the overlooked daughter, now daring to speak. My heart thundered, but I didn't look away. For the first time in years, she was the one cornered, not me. She straightened, trying to regain her queenly posture. "This is not your concern, Ava. You wouldn't understand." I tilted my head. "Try me." She flinched. Just slightly, but enough for Ryan's family to notice. His mother's lips pressed together. His father's brow furrowed. Guests shifted in their seats, eager for the storm. The phone rang again. My mother answered, her voice cracking now. "Hello? Yes, I understand. But this can't, no. Don't say that here." Her hand shook so violently, she nearly dropped the phone. I took a step closer, my voice sharp enough to slice the music in half. "Who was that? The bank? The police? Or maybe the creditors finally tired of your games?" Gasps fluttered through the air. My sister hissed at me. "Shut up, Ava. You don't know anything." But the truth was clear. They did. The glittering night had been nothing more than a disguise, and now it was peeling away in front of everyone. I stood straighter, every nerve in my body alive with something I hadn't felt in years: power. And in that silence, one thought crystallized in my mind. This was only the beginning. The chandeliers above flickered as if even the electricity was holding its breath. My mother pressed the phone to her ear so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Everyone in the hall leaned forward, hungry for answers. "What do you mean the assets are seized?" she hissed into the receiver. Her voice cracked, slicing through the music like glass breaking. No, you can't do this. Not tonight. Do you know who I am?" The call ended with a hollow beep. My mother lowered the phone slowly, as if it had suddenly become too heavy to hold. She swayed for a moment before catching herself against a chair. Her face had lost all color. Ryan's mother whispered to her husband, "Seized assets? At her own daughter's engagement? My God." The whispers multiplied, circling like vultures. My sister grabbed our mother's arm, panic dripping from her voice. "Mom, tell me they're lying. Tell me this isn't real. You said the money was safe, you promised." I stepped forward, my voice loud and steady. "What money? The $13 million you flaunted tonight? or the money you stole from father's business accounts? A ripple ran through the room. Gasps, shocked murmurs, clinking glasses set down too hard. My mother whipped around, her eyes burning into me. Enough, Ava. You will not humiliate this family. I laughed bitterly, though my hands trembled at my sides. Humiliate? You did that yourself when you stripped me of dignity just to buy my sister diamonds. You sold my car to feed her vanity. And for what? To cover up debts you knew were about to swallow you whole. My sister's eyes widened. Debts? What debts? The room stilled, waiting for an answer. My mother's lips pressed together, but the silence betrayed her. Ryan stepped beside me, his hand steady at my back. Ava, if there's something we need to know, say it now. My family deserves the truth. My heart hammered, but I refused to back down. The truth is this. My mother has been siphoning money from father's company for years. Tonight's gifts were nothing but hush money and stolen funds. That phone call. I pointed at the trembling device still clutched in her hand. That was the end of her empire. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, accusations. Someone shouted, "Is this true?" Another voice snapped, "Unbelievable." My mother tried to regain control, her voice shrill and desperate. Lies. All lies. Ava is jealous. Always jealous. She's making this up because she can't stand to see her sister shine. But her trembling hands told another story. Ryan's father rose to his feet, his voice booming across the hall. Enough games. If what Ava says is true, then your family has not only disgraced her, but entangled us in scandal. We will not be made fools. My mother froze. My sister looked like the floor had just been ripped out from under her. And me? For the first time that night, I stood taller than both of them. Because humiliation can break you. Or it can crown you. And in that moment, I chose the crown. The ballroom was no longer a celebration. It had turned into a trial, and my mother stood at the center of it, trembling under the weight of every stare. The string quartet had stopped playing. Even the instruments seemed ashamed to be part of the charade. My mother raised her chin, trying to gather the remnants of her dignity. "Everyone, please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "This is a misunderstanding. I'll have it resolved by morning." But the guests were no longer her audience. They were her jury. Whispers grew sharper, slicing through the air like knives. Misunderstanding? With millions at stake. She sold her own daughter's car for this spectacle. How disgraceful. My sister, desperate to protect the glitter slipping through her fingers, clutched our mother's arm. "Say something. Fix this. You promised me everything." I stepped forward, my voice cold but steady. "She can't fix it, Sophia. Because there's nothing left to fix. The truth is out, and the empire you've been living off was built on sand. Tonight isn't about me being overlooked. It's about both of you finally being exposed." My sister's face flushed red. "Shut up, Ava. You're just bitter because you've always been the unwanted one." Her words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled, a calm, dangerous smile. Unwanted? Maybe. But at least I'm not about to drown in the very ocean you thought was your throne. At that moment, the ballroom doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits strode in, followed by a woman carrying a stack of documents. Their presence was commanding, official. The room hushed instantly. "Excuse us," one of the men said firmly. "We are here on behalf of the Financial Crimes Division." Gasps ricocheted through the hall. My mother staggered back, nearly losing her balance. My sister clutched her gown, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Ryan's father stepped aside, folding his arms. His eyes locked on my mother with a mixture of disgust and pity. "So it is true," he muttered. The woman with the documents spoke clearly, her words slicing through the silence. "We have orders to freeze all assets under the name of Margaret and Sophia Hale, pending investigation for fraud and misappropriation of company funds." My sister's scream ripped through the hall. "What? No. That money is mine. You can't take it from me." The officer's eyes were unflinching. It was never yours to begin with. My mother tried to argue, her voice shaking. Please, not here. This is my daughter's engagement. But I stepped forward, cutting her off. No, mother. This was your stage, your performance. And now the curtain has finally fallen. The hall erupted into chaos, guests whispering, some even filming on their phones, others shaking their heads in disgust. My mother's hands trembled as the documents were shoved toward her. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, her pearls dull, her voice gone. Ryan took my hand, his grip steady, strong. His family, once doubtful, now looked at me with something new, respect. And me? I didn't feel like the overlooked daughter anymore. I felt like the storm that had blown the mask off a queen who thought she could never fall. But I knew this was only the beginning. Their downfall had just started, and my rise was still to come. The engagement hall that was supposed to sparkle with laughter and champagne now smelled of scandal and fear. The chandeliers still glowed, but their light no longer flattered my mother and sister. It exposed them. The officials escorted my mother and sister to the side, pressing papers into their hands as cameras from guests' phones captured every second. The once admiring crowd now looked at them with contempt. Whispers turned to open condemnation. Thieves. How humiliating, at her own daughter's engagement. Imagine stealing from your own family business, just to play queen. My mother's voice cracked as she tried to plead with anyone who would listen. It's not true, it's all a mistake, we'll fix it. But her trembling hands betrayed her. My sister, usually so arrogant, clung to her mother's arm like a frightened child. Mom, do something. You said this money was mine. But there was nothing left to do. Ryan's family watched quietly, their judgment written across their faces. His father leaned close to Ryan and said, "You chose wisely, son. She's stronger than her entire family combined." His words reached me, steadying the storm in my chest. Ryan's mother touched my hand gently. "Ava, don't carry their shame. Tonight showed us who you really are." For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as the forgotten daughter. Not as the girl left empty-handed. But as someone who had endured betrayal and still stood tall in front of everyone. Meanwhile, my mother and sister were escorted out of the ballroom under the weight of whispers and glares. The empire they had bragged about, the wealth they flaunted, was stripped away in minutes. Their fall was swift and merciless. The guests turned back to me. Instead of pity, I saw something different in their eyes, admiration. They had witnessed me endure the deepest humiliation and rise above it without breaking. Ryan squeezed my hand. "You don't have to fight them alone anymore," he whispered. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. They had tried to bury me in silence, but the silence had become my armor. Their betrayal had not destroyed me. It had set me free. That night didn't end with tears. It ended with a quiet smile as I walked out of the hall on Ryan's arm, leaving behind the ashes of a queen who thought she could never fall. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't come with fire or fury. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply surviving while your enemies crumble. The days that followed my engagement spread through the city like wildfire. Every newspaper, every social feed, every whisper in polished cafes carried the same headline: "Family empire collapses at daughter's engagement party." My mother and sister, once the darlings of society, were reduced to symbols of greed and humiliation. The car they sold behind my back was gone, the jewels they paraded confiscated, the bank accounts frozen solid. They were no longer queens, they were beggars in borrowed gowns. For years they had built their thrones on stolen wealth, but all thrones eventually rot when the foundation is lies. And me? For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in their shadow. Ryan's family, who once whispered doubts, now embraced me with open arms. His father told me at dinner, "Strength like yours can't be bought, it's born." His mother squeezed my hand and said, "You didn't just survive, Ava. You proved you're a woman who will never bow to cruelty." Ryan himself became my anchor and my wings. One evening, as we walked through the quiet streets lit by golden lamps, he stopped and said softly, "You know, Ava, they tried to strip you of everything. But watching you stand tall that night, it made me certain of one thing. You're the strongest person I'll ever know. And I want to build a life with you, not in their shadow, but in your light. Tears warmed my eyes, not from pain this time, but from the sweetness of being chosen for who I was, not what I lacked. I started again step by step. I found work, not glamorous but honest, and every paycheck felt like a crown I placed on my own head. With Ryan by my side, I wasn't defined by what I was denied, but by what I created. And as my mother and sister faded from society's graces, I rose, not with stolen millions, but with dignity, resilience, and love that no scandal could ever buy. The night they tried to ruin me became the night I was reborn. Because the forgotten daughter had finally learned that sometimes the greatest revenge is not just survival, it's building a life so bright that it blinds those who once tried to keep you in the dark.